Hello. John Blanche's On Guard is a brand new 54mm dueling game that has been created from the mind of John Blanche with rules by Tuomas Pirinen and some of the finest artists and sculptors involved in the project that you can see working in tabletop games today. I have had the absolute pleasure of speaking to many of the individuals involved in the creation of this game, including John Blanche himself and Tuomas Pirinen, the rules designer. This is an anthology of those interviews. I have edited down to just the most important parts about the creation of John Blanche's On Guard, so you can get all of the perspectives from everybody involved in building a brand new game inspired by the work of an absolute master. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today I'm in lots of conversations about the creation of John Blanche's On Guard. So I was talking to Ronan about On Guard recently.
Yes.
You've created that world, right? That's one of that sort of starts from your art. So what was your journey with the creation of that?
So I started drawing it and became something else. And I don't remember what the original was. But so something else is it develops as it goes along. It's what I still could draw. I wanted to explore a bit of the 17th and definitely the 18th century nobility were sword fancy and fancy clothes, lots of lace and stuff. And I just ended up doing it all like that. Getting involved with lace punk. Oh, I got a bit bored with everything's medieval. I go, well, let's do something that's a bit later in real history. And as I was doing it, it kind of walked towards the sea. And that kind of walked a bit piratey looking by accident. If I was really doing pirates, I'd done it slightly differently. But it's interesting to see what just comes out of spontaneity. I always find great solace in the spontaneous. Because it comes out of your head. It goes back to reality, even if you can't remember. So the spontaneous use of imagery that is real injects the concept with a touch of reality. And you never know where it's going to end up and where it starts from. So, yeah, it's a delightful progress. There's some lovely, lovely models.
Yeah, because Ronan shared a few of the like images that you'd done and some of the sculpts and stuff, and they look so cool. Like they're just really impressive.
I think that one will be Paul Hicks.
Yeah.
But the one's Patrick Masson.
Right.
His stuff's absolutely glorious. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I just think the Americans are perhaps the only people who can afford to have stuff made like that. It's very expensive to do anything. So if you got a lot of money, you get stuff done.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I mean, it's obviously these kinds of passion projects now. There's some successes like your Trench Crusade, which has obviously been hugely successful. But like On Guard seems to be a real passion project for Nigel and Ronan, and trying to bring together as much talent as they can and trying to do justice to your designs and your world and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like a real talented crew.
Yeah, people have got reputations, and you get to know people and what they are capable of, and you can manipulate the work you do to allow them to produce something spectacular. So hopefully that's what we're doing.
Was there always a plan once you got to know each other? Was there then a plan to like we want to get into making a game ourselves?
It didn't start that
Yeah,
way, Nigel. Why don't you give him a shot on the ideas, the initial ones?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that we've done or the stuff that we're doing is, it all came out of our friendship. So, we just clicked. We just found we had an awful lot of shared interests. We just made this decision. I've helped people bring products to market before, outside of workshops. So I have a bit of experience of, and a Rolodex full of contacts. So, and I've made miniatures for myself just for the pleasure of it, which I've sort of done for friends and family. And we just talked about it. We was like, hey, I'd love to make. We talked about things we were interested in. One of the things that we were interested in is 54 millimeter miniatures, and we just said, hey, well, why don't we make some? So, and that really was that was the germ of it. Not just this project, but just making miniatures together. Just two mates making stuff that we like.
Yeah, and the other thing, there's a bit more background to this, but what happened was, I'll start in the later portion, and we can go back if needs be. We were talking to John. We were both friends of John to one degree or another, and I say that without any great pretentiousness. I'm not like John's very good to a lot of people, and he's very generous with his time, and he was certainly generous with his time with me and that. And we kind of hit it off to one degree or another. Nigel knew him longer than I did going back, and we asked him about things that he would like to have done, that he didn't get enough to do. And one of them was like to finish other 54 projects. Like John really loves 54 mil. And we kind of hatched up a notion to start doing bespoke, initially sci-fi stuff and sci-fi 54. And John started doing concepts that when we show them, people are really going to be over the moon about them. And that was the initial plan, to do some 54 sci-fi that Nigel and I would release. And Nigel had a lovely idea for the name of a company called Harrowhound, and John threw in Snagglespur. So originally it was going to be Harrowhound and Snagglespur. I guess I would have been Snagglespur, Nigel.
We haven't decided which one of us is which. Yeah,
and
they were both.
We
they
just
were both
like we
named.
said,
They were both
yeah,
named.
go on,
Out of
Nigel.
it was a list out of a book. It was like a book about witchcraft, and it was a big list of. We were trying to think of a name, weren't we, for our little enterprise? And I was flicking through a book about witchcraft, and I sent you a grab of it. And I think I must have sent John it as well. And it was just a big list of wacky names that people had for old Nick. And he picked the names out, didn't he? So
yeah, he loved it. And so we did. That was the original plan. And then let me again. There's other things I'd like to tell you about John, just because of how this all came to be. But in terms of actually getting to John Blanche's On Guard, what ended up happening was I'll never forget this day. Myself and Nigel were having a chat about how things were coming along. We were getting art sorted out with John, and we were talking about sculptors and that. And we both kind of start talking in a bit of a mad way about a fantasy version of 54 mil. And we both kind of said, wouldn't it be cool if it was something like this? And John is a huge fan. If for those who've been to visit him, he's a big fan of dueling and dueling history, 16th and 17th century stuff. And he has a lot of stuff in swords in his house. And that myself and Nigel were talking about it and said, what if we kind of made a game where it really could be actually a workable duel game? As a young fellow, when I was a kid, an abiding memory of mine was seeing my grandfather play dominoes and that with his mates in the pub. They actually had the wherewithal to have a game between them as they were becoming increasingly alcoholic. And I said, it's hard for, Nigel lives on the East Coast of the United States. I live in the West Coast. You live in England, Jordan, right? It's very difficult for us to cart our collections or Mordheim tables around. So myself and Nigel had the idea of a game that could be played between two people in any setting. And it was a dueling game, and it was 54 mil, and it was a new fantasy setting, something that was a bit different, low fantasy. I called John after me and Nigel kind of came to accord on we wanted this thing to look like. And John kind of, I wasn't sure he was receiving it, meaning I wasn't sure he was into it. And then he said something, and I don't want to misquote him, but I'm next to certain. He said, I've been waiting 40 years to play that game. Something like that, right? He said something like that.
He did. Yeah, he did.
And I was like, oh shit. So we all got together then in a chat and it started going. John, he's like a tornado. Not this is Nigel's term. He is an art tornado, a creative tornado. Stuff just starts flying out of him. So then I said, we're like, okay, good, great. John's into it. John's into it. That's all that matters. And then I said, naturally, it must be Tuomas that could maybe put some flesh on the bones of. We had an idea. Our basic idea was a dice pool game with cards, etc., and some kind of playmat. And we have to get someone who can make sense of these ideas. We then asked John, it's got to be Tuomas, right? And he's like, yeah, Tuomas. And then a chat began that maybe we should actually, maybe when we do the book for this game, we should publish at the back of it the original Facebook messages. I think they'd be part of a weird bit of history to it. But it was just bang, bang. This is the name of the city. This is the thing. This is the that. It can't be this. It can't be that. And John just said, right, I'm off to it. And he went off. And we didn't hear from him as we were kind of concocting ideas and who the sculptors would be. We'd already had a relationship with Paul, who deserves a lot of discussion here today. He really does. He's really come up tops on this. Anyway, and a month or so later, John just one day just here's the concepts, and it was like seeing the Inquisitor sketchbook for the first time. We're all like, oh, unbelievable, and that was it. So he built the world in a few weeks, and these concepts are masterpieces. We've shown some of them, I think, already on social media. You'll have seen them all maybe by the time this is published. But that was it. That's how it began. And John just exploded with ideas and new ideas. Some references to his old stuff, but definitely new ideas. And then 2 months got. Yeah, go on.
Go on, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, that was a crazy period where we were just riffing ideas off of each other. You know, our little Facebook group that we created, and everyone was just throwing things into the mix. You know, John was like, yeah, and Tuomas came on board, so we're just bouncing things off of each other, seeing what stuck. And as Ronan said, yeah, I mean, John can't stop creating. Like, he can't stop. Like, he's got a million ideas that he's trying to get them out onto paper all the time. So, this was something that he had been dreaming of, a game like this. And yeah, as Ronan said, he disappeared for a little bit and, briefly panicked because it's like, is he all right? Is he interested? Because he wasn't responding as much. And then, yeah, it was like this. It was almost like a Jack Kerouac writing On the Road kind of thing. He just, in that period of time, he knocked out all these characters that he saw as inhabiting the world. So yeah, it was exciting to watch.
Yeah, we're care custodians of this art for the moment, and we really want to get it out there with the sculpts to match them. And it was a tornado. And John, even today, like, he still wants to do stuff in terms of his capabilities to do that. He slowed down a bit, but he still wants to direct things. And he kind of talked to us about identifying certain people like Thomas Elliott, who are the new masters of physical art. And I think that's another important aspect of this, right? Like, this is all with human hands and human brains on paper and the physical side of all that. So one of the things in the early days of the game, there was some debate as to whether we would do certain things certain ways, like digital sculpts, etc. And we did a bit of that. But as we went through it, it felt more and more, given the size of this game, potentially meaning a quite small game where you'd have one character, that it made sense to harken back to certain things. So we got people like Maurice Krebs. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. And Nigel said, I want the logo to, remember, I think Nigel said, it should be like the old sorcery stuff. It should look that way. And we were just lucky that we kind of got close to that. But again, if you look at that logo, it doesn't really sit too well in the modern era of logos, certainly not the way Workshop and Co have gone. But I don't know, we're just looking back a little bit. But maybe the other thing is, let me just say this, the whole grimdark thing, right? It's really interesting because we had tonal discussions with John, like, what is a grimdark? What is it? And he's like, no, it's lush, it's vibrant, it's opulent, it's macabre, which it always is, but for those of us who have looked back into the history of John's art, like it's often quite bright and vibrant. It deals with some topics, but the grimdark stuff is, I mean, surely we could all agree that Mordheim is the highest statement of that. And John wants to do other things, right? So myself and Nigel really like to lean into that because with the logo and everything else, it really kind of went that way. We hope people like it. You can't please everyone, but maybe you can please all middle-aged men like us.
Yeah. My influences, do harken back to those early days of like fighting fantasy and the sorcery books in particular, which John illustrated throughout. So yeah, it was. I think we did talk about doing some digital design and digital art, and we just coming back to we all felt really strongly that we wanted everything for this project to be kind of old school. I guess it's not a bad word, is it? We wanted physical sculpts. We wanted actual pen and paper art. Because it's what we love. So yeah.
The very first game of On Guard that myself and Nigel really played with Tuomas was played in Nottingham in that little boutique hill or hotel up on the hill. You know, the one that you don't really get a lobby anymore. You walk in and you can microwave your own croissant. Whatever the name of that little hotel is. There's a table in front, and Tuomas came down with big printed out cards and boards of the things he'd been kind of slaving away on. And myself and Nigel played, I suppose it's the inaugural game of John Blanche's On Guard. And we were quite giddy afterwards. Tuomas has cracked a code. Do you remember, Jordan? I bet you did this, and I bet Nigel did it too. When we were young fellas or younger people, we'd get our strongest characters from 40K or Warhammer, and we fight them against the strongest general on the other side, right?
Sure.
And you remember what that looks like. They're at this distance, then they come to this distance, and then it's a roll off until attrition kicks in and they die. Yeah. So dueling games traditionally are bloody terrible. No disrespect to any dueling games that are out there, but they tend to be
bloody terrible.
Yeah, but you bloody terrible dueling games. How dare you? This game has been infused with movement somehow. Somehow it has been achieved. So when we were playing the game, what was in my mind, I don't know what was in Nigel's mind, was Rob Roy or something. That last duel in Rob Roy, or any of the great duels in the Duelists. Again, all of these were fantastic references in the early days of developing On Guard, by the way. And of course, I'm picking the movie stuff, and John and Tuomas are telling you about the duel they visited in a time machine in 1702. But you see what I'm saying? So the game, I don't want to give us medals for something that doesn't exist yet, but it is a dynamic game. So if you and I one day, Jordan, are sitting in a pub somewhere in beautiful England, and we roll out the mat to play this game, it will feel quite dynamic, hopefully, if it continues to play the way it's been playing so far.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of fun. And I think then it as a system, again, not writing checks here, but it could be a thing that, let's say you played Mordheim and you wanted to have a one-on-one duel between your warband leaders. On Guard could be a system to do that with, and it could be just a little bit of fun. So it will live in the world that we are creating for it, that John saw in his mind, and we kind of nudged ideas around, and Tuomas is writing about. But it can also be potentially a dueling system that can be a fantasy dueling system beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It does. Ronan, talked about the movement. That's something you see in a lot of dueling games where your miniatures basically move towards each other and just have a fight. And this system that Tuomas has concocted does capture that movement that should be in a duel, that dance quality where you're in and out of engaging each other. You're moving around them. You could be behind them. You could be 2 steps in front. So I know Ronan said this on social media a bunch of times, but he says the term, he says crack the code, and I think he has.
Yeah, I think he really has. So we're kind of interested to see how it gets. We have to do a lot of play testing on it because it's a small game. And this was Tuomas's absolute insistence, and it makes perfect sense. A game like this, because it's a card-based game and the characters will have a certain type of card and a certain type of movement, etc., we have to play test the hell out of it, because we don't want any particular duelist just cracking. To the extent there's going to be power gamers that want to really win, and that's not what we're into. Myself and Nigel will routinely not will die well, won't we, Nigel? Right,
Yeah.
when we're playing. Do you know what I'm saying? We got to crack that code. So there will be play testing. So one of the things that we anticipate is when the initial Kickstarter. Nigel, why don't you tell him the plan? Because Nigel has the brain for all this kind of stuff. But getting some minis out and the game comes later, right? But we have to make sure it's well done.
Yeah. So the plan we have at the moment, because 54 mil, going back to why we like 54 mil. 54 mil is this fantastic collectors and painters scale. So if you think about military modelers, there's some amazing. There was, I think Andrea miniatures are still out there, but there's a whole bunch of amazing military figures and historical figures, military figures, and some fantasy, for painters and collectors. And these miniatures, I think, and I'm sure, and Ronan thinks the same, are so good that some people just want to paint and collect them, because they're physical representations of John's art. So our plan, as it stands, is the first wave of characters are all done. So we want to give people the opportunity to start collecting them as we get ready for the game. So we are going to do a limited Kickstarter, and it will be a wave of characters. So people are going to have an opportunity to pick up the first wave of characters, build, paint them, enjoy them, and by the time you've got those, that you'll be ready. We'll be ready to unleash the game on you. So.
But it sounds, that as a project, the lineup of talent involved, the concept, they do all sound amazing, and I'm really excited to see more of it and to see how people react to it and to get it to the table, to see those miniatures in all their glory. So I would expect a lot of folks to be really excited by it. I mean, is there anything you would say, like, as the final? We've talked a lot about, the merits of the game and the exciting stuff, but what would be your sort of final note? How would you describe it to someone who's on the fence about it?
For me, this whole project for us is a labor of love. It's a love note to John, who's inspired us so much over the years. We're both very lucky to call him a friend, and it's just been an absolute privilege to do it. We really hope that people enjoy it. Like we love what we've done. We love every image that John's done. We love every sculpt that Paul and Patrick have done. We're excited about the rules that Tuomas has come up with. So we just love it. It's something that we're really happy and proud of. And we just hope that people enjoy it. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to create Warhammer. We're making this game which makes us happy, and we hope that people enjoy it too. So
yeah, 100%. The only thing I would add to that, not like Daddy Brady when he says, "I couldn't have put it better myself, John, but I'll try." Nigel correctly stated. He correctly stated the overview of the game. I'll just say that this is a game for those of us who it's not so easy to paint squads and armies and warbands as we used to. You can put a lot of love and effort into a single or a number of singles of these characters. And you can go down to the pub if you want, or down to the park, or sit wherever the bloody hell you like, and roll out this thing and play with a friend perhaps you haven't seen in a long time. Perhaps you've had a day full of tournamenting. Perhaps you've been playing Mordheim all day somewhere in New England. And then afterwards, later on, when you're having a drink or something to eat, you can play this as well. And again, if people don't want to play it, they may still like the miniatures. And it's crucially important to understand that we didn't just stick John's name on something like, here's a mug, John Blanche's mug, John Blanche's t-shirt, John Blanche's bloody this. It wasn't that. This was a world that we had this simple idea, and he somehow visualize an entire world at his age, in his stage in life, in a matter of weeks. And that is part of what people will be getting to see. And for myself and Nigel, everything beyond that, everything beyond us having these conversations with them about this world is pure bonus. Pure
Mhm.
bonus. Right? We joked that one day he and I would be traveling through down to Slough we'll be selling out the back of the van, you know, miles and miles of carpet tiles
Yes,
from Harrowhound Miniatures.
I mean, the game,
Yeah,
the game as well. You know,
yeah,
the way it's been designed, it's a game that if you've never touched a miniatures game
yeah,
before, you could play it. Right? It's not. You don't have to have years of experience. You don't have to be a seasoned gamer. You know, you could roll this out. You could be on the fringes of a convention, and you roll it out, and you need 2 foot. You mean about 2 foot of space. You know, so you roll it out, roll your mat out, get your cards out, and you could play this with somebody that's never touched a miniature in their life, and they'd have a fun time. It's a game that's going to be really, really easy to get. It might not be so easy to get good at, but it's going to be a very easy game to pick up how it works.
Right.
So
yeah,
we want it to be this accessible, fun thing with beautiful miniatures.
I mean, what's your relationship with like John Blanche's work been? Are you a big fan? Have you followed his work
Oh,
over the years?
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
I've known I had a copy of Rat Spike
Right.
in my teenage years. Yeah, like when I first sort of got into going to Games Workshops. That was when I was about 12 at the Darling Road one. So
Right.
that
The
was not
original.
too far from school. I had a copy of Rat Spike, and I had based an Empire army on some of his sketches out of the one where all the knights are sort of stacked up in
Right.
profile on the horseback with the elector counts. That all his artwork has always been an inspiration, especially when I worked at Games Workshop as well.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been a massive, massive fan.
Right. Because it feels, it's hard to describe, I suppose. It feels very like Warhammer, doesn't it? Obviously, there's loads of
Yeah,
artists involved in Warhammer's history, but John Blanche's art, it casts in the best possible way. It casts a shadow across all of those worlds
yeah,
and
yeah,
really
yeah,
brings
yeah,
them to
yeah,
life.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. It's like I don't know, if just to be plucked out and to be asked to work on such a project is just beyond my wildest dreams.
Sure.
So it means a hell of a lot to be able to work on these concepts, because if it's like mind blowing to think that this is his concept for miniatures. I might be wrong, but I think I'm right. They might be the first concept since he retired from GW.
Sure. I think that might be right. Yeah, I think that might be
So
right.
to be like one of the first sculptors to work on those concepts is just like, how crazy is that? It is a very much, if you could tell, younger self that this is what's going to happen, you can no, that's not. Yeah, past Paul would definitely not. Would think I was crazy.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was the? Because obviously John Blanche has got a very particular style, and in
Yeah,
when it comes to his concept work as well, it's very loose. It's very there's a lot of atmosphere to them, and there's a lot of detail in some ways, but then there's also like a lot left to the imagination. It seems like so
yeah.
when you're sitting down to go, okay, I'm going to turn this concept into a miniature. What's that process like? Like, how do you do that?
So for the first one, the first couple, I went sort of kind of straight from the artwork, the concept, and then there was, well, John would like to see more of, um, you expand and work. That's the concept, and we want you to sort of work from it.
Right.
And I can't. I think I got. It sort of started to click when I did the zombie. There's a zombie pirate that sort of the concept, and then took elements But even for like Milady, which was the first one I did, I just absolutely immersed myself in as much John Blanche art that I could. Just going on Pinterest or anything, going through old rule books, just going through everything. And luckily, I have kind of a good memory for find. Oh, I can remember such and such on a piece of art, and then sort of find it, reference it. I think, oh, he's used that somewhere. So, you can then, even it's like doing a historical period. I'll just try and immerse myself in as much media on the subject just to sort of get into the flow. And it was no different to doing this. You just had to get yourself into his artwork, and that mind, hopefully get into that kind of artistic flow that he
Sure.
has with his art.
Yeah, that's very fun because this is really interesting because obviously you tend to do a lot of, not exclusively, but you do a lot of historical miniatures.
99%, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then obviously these have historical reference points in
Yeah.
John's art, but he's also bringing his like wild and wonderful concepts to it, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah,
quite an
yeah, yeah.
interesting bridge between that pure fantasy and then the historicity of it as well.
But it somehow it just collides and works so
Right.
well. Because I think John must have such an eye for period costume as well that it can all just be put into the mix and then still come out and feel cohesive.
Mm.
And that's the issue sometimes I've had with a couple of figures that I've tried, you try and shoehorn something in and it's just instantly doesn't work. So you have to kind of, I don't know, really, it's a weird sort of not thinking about it and thinking about it at the same time, and not being conscious of, I'm gonna, I don't know, it might just be a simple buckle out of place, or a strap out of place, and it just doesn't work. You remove it, and then put it, and then start again, and then it just completely works.
Right. Sure, yeah. It's almost like leave it not quite the same, but in the same place as you come back to it the next day and all of a sudden you just have fresh eyes and
Yeah,
on a
there is a
problem.
lot of that as well, that you just have to go, right, I honestly really cannot see anymore.
Is there a favorite of the miniatures that you've worked on?
I think it's the dead pirate. I think the zombie pirate. I
Right.
think that's the one that sort of came together. And Milady, because she was the first one. Because when someone says, "Oh, you're going to work on John Blanche's work," and it's like, okay, that's really exciting. And you calm down, and then you have like massive imposter syndrome. Like, oh my God, am I going to be good enough to do this? And then sort of working on Milady, and then I think we went out. We dropped my daughter off at Taekwondo, and we went to a bar, me and my wife, and we were talking about it, and then it just wasn't, something wasn't clicking with it, with the figure, and I just sort of thought, if I don't do this, I'm not only going to let myself down, but I'm going to let John Blanche. How can you turn down that? Getting to work on such fantastic art. So that was a good kick up the backside, and then to sort of next day on the Saturday get back onto to working on it, and then finishing it, and then everyone being really happy with the work, and then to get a message on New Year's Day from John Blanche saying he's so he's really happy with it, and he can't wait to paint it. And my birthday's New Year's Eve, so that like waking over sort of with a slight hangover the next day, and then to get that message is, it just meant the world.
I mean, how did you become involved in this project?
It's fun. So I know John Blanche's name and art for years. Although I'm not a fan of Games Workshop. So I know the thing, but I'm not a big fan of that. I did not came into miniature by Games Workshop. I came by some just my personal taste, but. But I knew his art. I knew his name. I know the legend he is in the miniature world and for people. So it's it's Ronan Duggan who contacted me, saying so he was working developing this future game. And the funny thing or strange thing for me, he said that John Blanche, he knew my work, John Blanche, and at least Ronan told me that John Blanche specifically asked for me to be involved in the project.
Amazing.
So it was a big surprise, I will say, for me, honor because yeah, I know the name. I know I never had the chance to chat with him or discuss with him directly, but yeah, hearing that okay, he knew my work and he was following my work and he was asking specifically me to be involved in the project was really something special. I would say. Yeah.
Amazing. So there's obviously a lot of different characters in On Guard, and John has designed most of them. But like, did you then were you just shown all of the art and you got to choose which ones you were going to be involved with, or were you given some that were like tailored to your style?
Yeah, I was being given the choice. Ronan sent me a couple of concepts. Not all. I think he has done more than what I've received, but I've received a bunch of them, and then he told me, okay. At that time, I was working on other projects, so I was not having a lot of time slots for the game. So by the time I make my choice, some were already made and things like that. But anyway, we decided together one I was wishing to start with. So this is the vampire. Yeah. So yeah. This one was my first one. So it's a dead vampire. Very John Blanche style, I would say. And so it was interesting. And Ronan told me that the poses are quite static on the concept, and so he gave me, or he asked me specifically to change the pose and to find something very dynamic between the two first characters I was working on, because he wanted the two to be like in a fight scene, or be able to pose them in a fight scene. So I changed completely the pose compared to the design to add that. So it was interesting. At the same time, not easy in some way, because you need to stay true to the art, but changing the pose specifically on one of them was not that easy because of a design of a dress is wearing. But yeah, that was cool.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it must be quite interesting because, I mean, going back to Adrian Smith, right? Quite detailed art.
Yep.
John Blanche's art is a lot, especially in this kind of concept era that he's in now, is much looser and it's far more it's kind of like vibes and feelings, and you get a sense of the character and the world. How do you? I mean, that quite difficult to translate into something more tangible?
Yes, because you have many things to imagine or to.
Yeah.
Adrian is it's very precise. So you just, I would say, you just have to follow the guides and try to reproduce every details. But for John Blanche, especially his latest work, they are a bit more loose, yeah, as you say. So yeah, it's a more general feeling. So you have a sense of the figure, and then you have to really adapt it. And so I use my experience, I will say, just to and looking also at his more older work, where he was a little bit more precise, maybe, just to pick some ideas about how he was describing this kind of detail. And so I'm mixing my experience and with that, and yeah, trying to fill the gap or make that more miniature style. So adding precise details to the general idea that was made by John.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what was it like seeing those different images for the first time?
That's great. Yeah, you feel lucky. You feel lucky because that's always what I thought with my job. It's in some way you are lucky to be able to see the concept before everyone else. Yeah, looking at that with eyes that nobody or a few people only have seen that. So it's very it's very unique to have that chance. And yeah, it's I would say it's a chance to try to make that into 3D, into a physical model, so that every people can play with it and have it in hands and feel the concept, but in 3 dimension. so it's really unique and very I feel lucky for that.
You've also been working on Garde, right? So you've been brought in to create some art for that. I mean, what was like? How did you get involved with that project?
Yeah, I on it. So basically, I was just contacted by Ronan, who's the sort of like the big creative force and the kind of the spider in the middle of the web, who's pulling together all these different creative people. And I can't remember how. I think he just contacted me through Instagram, and he's just like the loveliest guy. It was very glowing about my art, and he was just like, hey, we've got this kind of experimental, we've got this game, it's very led by John Blanche, would you like to do some art for it? And I was like, oh hell yeah, it sounds great. And we're just kind of taking it from there, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So and have you done many pieces for it, or because I know you've done one particularly an important piece around John Blanche. Is there other stuff you've done for it as well?
Yeah, no, I've done quite a lot. So I don't know how much I can say, but it's I've done a lot of character illustrations,
sure,
sort of in a similar vein to the John Blanche thing, where there's sort of dripping with attitude, traditionally done, old school black and white ink painting, all that good stuff.
Yeah, because John's art for it is really it's in his quite inimitable sort of loose, sketchy style, but it's full of all of that atmosphere, and you get the vibes of those characters, right? And then obviously the sculptors have then turned those into into the miniatures. So are you working from John Blanche's originals? Are you working from the sculpted pieces? Is it a combination as you sort of
So I work from the John Blanche originals,
Right.
and the sculptors are riffing off of the art that I make.
Right, okay.
So, but it's been a wonderful experience. So my time at Games Workshop unfortunately didn't overlap with John Blanche's time.
Right.
So I've been working with the legacy of John, but I haven't worked with him directly. And this is my first time getting to do that, and I can totally see why he has the reputation that he does. But as you say, his work is very evocative, and with very little, he can describe very much.
Sure, yeah. And there is a real like there is a world in every single one of his images, it feels like. And it's it's impossible to explain because it feels like there's not a lot of detail in some of his. Obviously there's a lot of detail in his characters, but the worlds are kind of in the shadow. And yet there's still you get a feel for where these characters live through the characters themselves, it feels like. Yeah, amazing. I mean, what when it came to creating, because you've created a very a sort of homage to John Blanche, and you've cast him as one of the pirates, one of the characters within the On Guard world. What was it like taking on that challenge?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I did feel a little bit intimidated by the fact that obviously it's John as a character. John's going to see it, and you know this artist who's been very influential in my creative development. So I wanted to make him proud. But it was great fun as well. So it's one of the things I sort of associate with John's work, and everything John is attached to is just the over the topness of it. You know, like whatever it is, it's dialed up to 11, and I wanted to take this idea of a pirate, which is quite cliche at this point, and just sort of see what I could do with it, see, you know, how I could sort of pump up to John levels of absurdity. So with the design of it, I was just like looking at all the things I sort of associate, like you got the nautical, there's the fish elements, like there's, you know, shark jaws, flintlock pistols, sabers, cutlasses, and just being like, how much of this can I put in this picture before it sort of breaks down? And I think I managed to get it like on the cusp, which is what I was hoping for.
Well, yeah, because it's got that real in the best possible way. It has the over the top vibe. It's dripping with the sort of John Blanchian kind of detail, I suppose. Yeah, you definitely feel, and it looks like John Blanche as well. Facially, it is John Blanche, which is amazing. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you.
So is there other work for On Guard? You mentioned that you obviously done sort of character pieces. Are there like like battle scenes and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah. So we've talked about having me on board for doing the cover.
Right.
So that will be a very involved picture, I imagine.
Right.
And we've got a couple of multi-figure illustrations that have already been completed. So yeah, no, like I think there's going to be big, exciting stuff, unveiled in the future.
Sure, yeah. And I suppose a final question on that. You mentioned like, working with, it was an opportunity to work with John. Have you been able to speak to him very much? Have you sort of learned anything from John? Even just looking at and working with his work directly, has that given you any sort of new insights into the processes and the creation of art?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like his, I'd say like his efficiency, like just kind of going back to what we were saying before, where he's able to describe so much with so little. And because I think having worked with video games and a couple of different industries now, it seems to be a concept art tends to try and like go so far, like it wants to describe it in like so much detail and like, no, this is how it actually is. And, we've got it from every angle and it's inside out and back to front and beautifully rendered and all that stuff. And I personally feel like that's going too far, and I think John's stuff is really refreshing in that like it leaves breathing room for, for the artists to, there's room for interpretation in there, which is something I haven't really seen in many other places.
I mean, speaking of On Guard, then, like, how did you become involved in this project? Was it just you heard it was going on, or were you reached out to?
Well, I've been talking to John a fair bit more after he retired. It's because when he retired, I put the message out. And then I woke next morning and there were tens of thousands of notifications on my social media. And I realized I was the only one who had said that. So the news went out and all the news sites picked it up. And I was rather surprised that this was not, how would I say, that I was the source of information. But I've already, when there was a Mordheim 20-year anniversary and John came to Finland, we had a good chance to reconnect, and I've been keeping closer tabs. And John's been talking a long time wanting to do a dueling game. He loved doing Inquisitor. He loved 54 mil, and he loves this sort of the golden age of dueling, the sort of the decadent splendor that there was in the Venice at the high days of dueling. And he wanted to bring that to tabletop, and he was working on these magnificent duelists, designs, artwork, sketches. And honestly, I couldn't really let any other game designer to do it. I mean, I would have been so mortally upset. I thought that it doesn't matter how busy I am. I'm doing this game because it's such a important part of my career, my collaboration with John Blanche, that I thought that I feel. I'm not saying because I'm doing it for enjoyment, but I do feel slightly unbound or maybe rather going that, hey, everybody else, keep your hands off. I'm doing this with John.
Sure.
But it's really driven by John's desire to see this game happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because John Blanche had done a series of miniatures at something around this scale in the past, didn't he? They were non-Games Workshop. They were his own Femme Militant that were essentially the same kind of duelist, really beautifully designed John Blanche characters.
Yeah.
By a range of amazing sculptors. I mean, it's almost it seems from the outside like perhaps this game has always been in his head and he's always been working towards it.
Yeah, I think it's his creative process probably led him that he came up with these designs and slowly started thinking what the world they might be in, what they might be used in, until he sorted out, of course, it's the Inquisitor. Inquisitor was a very dear project to him, just like Mordheim. These are duelists. We should make a dueling game. Of course, John is not a game designer. It was sort of a very natural fit for us to team up. So, and honestly, it is such a clear, concise vision. It's the dueling in a sort of a fantasy version of a Venice and maybe a couple of other cities. It's the right roads with the sunken colossi on its harbor combined together, where all the greatest duelists around this world that John's created come together and the fight battles of honor. In many ways, it was very easy to work on it because there really isn't like the scope and the focus is so clear. So you don't start thinking about what are the rules for the sailing ships or a international trade in this world, because what matters is the intense duel, is the fought in this is beautiful, splendid, decaying alley.
Sure, yeah. Does that make the actual sort of rule design process easier or harder? Because I guess you don't have anywhere to hide because it's so focused on that specific interaction.
Easier.
Right.
Imagine if I asked you to write two stories. One I said, write anything you want. And the second one I'd say, write a story set in a oil rig in 1947. The latter story would be much better. Because what happened on that year? Oh, it's just after the Second World War. Oil rig is isolated in the middle of the sea. There could be a storm. While the other one, you are lost in this fog. The challenge really came more from the pure design side, that there's been many dueling games in the past, but they've always, in my mind, suffered from the problem that you have like two guys standing in front of each other and then you roll off who wins. All the stuff about the moving backwards and forwards and dodging and the dirty tricks, the kind of stuff that happened in the Princess Bride's duel, have been mainly missing, or they are very abstracted. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing. There are lots of duel games that I think are great, but the kind of feel that you want, this dynamism, movement, is the taking a back step, lunging forward, is desperate parries. I haven't gotten that in any dueling game I played, so I really wanted to bring that to the gaming world.
Right, great, yeah. So how did you do that? How did you make the mechanics that represent that and give that feel? Yeah,
so I will speak a little bit boring game design, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. So basically, each duelist builds a deck of cards. that represent all the possible moves they can make. And these could be lunges or the backflips or backstabs, depending on your position. They could be like trips. They could be taking a swig of rum if you happen to be a dueling pirate. And these will have gameplay effects. And every card can also be, if you don't want to use it, you can put it down, and that allows you to move one square. So they could be like you're in close combat with the opponent with 2 daggers. They are very deadly close by. So you use one card to step back, and then you are armed with a longsword. You use a lunging attack, which is more effective from distance. There is always this dance, and some moves require you like the run past the opponent and they strike them in the back, so you need to plan your moves ahead. You always roll a dice in the start of every turn, which represents the energy or opportunities you have, and then the cards have costs to pull off attacks. Of course, more powerful attacks, you need a more dice or higher dice or certain numbers. But then some cards which represent your thinking and planning allow you to manipulate those dice. So it becomes this dance of the movement, attacks, parries, dodges, and the game mechanics strongly favor mobile fighters. So just standing in the front of the other guy is usually very dangerous. It's you want to fight in your optimal distance. You want to strengthen the fallback. You might have a dueling pistol. You don't want to do that in close combat because it's easier to parry it, and so on and so forth. And obviously, I am the most biased person in the world, but I'm pretty happy with the system.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it sounds like it really gives a level of dynamism to it, because I think you're right in that you can often get games that feature dueling can sometimes end with you sort of line up face to face, and then that's it. That's where you are, and then it's just stab and parry and stab and parry, and there isn't as much movement and there isn't as much incentive to move around. It's nice to hear that is quite like baked in. That's a big part of the system.
Yeah, and there is also like this system of there is like once you depleted the health of opponent, they have a couple of the desperation hit points, which then it doesn't matter how powerful your attack, it only takes 1 point, unless you pull off a killing blow. But the killing blow might require you to first that the opponent has to be tripped, and then you need the coup de grace strike, which then takes all the remaining health away, and then that also almost always requires maneuvering, preparation. It's the tricks using the terrain, like kicking the opponent against the wall and then doing a double-handed pierce to heart. So you're playing with the distance and position a lot, which gives it that kind of a feeling that I don't know if you've seen Rob Roy,
sure.
But that was the final duel, which I love. It's absolutely incredible. I wanted you to feel like that when you're playing it, but I also wanted a game that's super easy to start playing. So 2 models, very small mat with squares that represents the place where the duel takes place. Both players have the deck they've done and a couple of dice, and that's it, and you're on the board. It's so I wanted something that requires much less preparation. So instead of building a list and once you have your deck, you just have it always. And you just shuffle it, and you deal every cards and every turn, and you look at your dice and see what options you have.
Sure, yeah. When you say building the deck, does that allow for sort of expanded, like new cards to come out and for you to have new options as well?
Absolutely. And the idea there is that John is a art and model driven person, that when we would have, like, if you decide to give your guy a dagger and a rapier, then you would match your deck. We give a recommendation that wherever possible, the card should match your equipment. We are not going to force that, because people like that. But I think a lot of people will want to make their own duelist that have their own arms and weapons, and then the deck will allow them to replicate that duelist that they've built or customized or modified in the deck faithfully, so it fights in a way that the model is built and armed.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And having seen some of John Blanche's artwork to represent these different characters, these different duelists, I mean, they are incredible. It's amongst his best work, in the sense that these are really characterful, exciting, and interesting characters. It must have been great to see them for the first time, to be writing rules for them.
Oh, it makes it so easy, because quite often, and again, this is not a slight on anyone, quite often designer has to try to imagine that final piece of art in their mind and describe the weapons, armor, what kind of hat they have, it's the boots, hidden weapons. But John, when he makes a sketch, he doesn't need any of that, especially since this is his own world, and they are so brimming with details and ideas that you can just, of course, he's done this forever. John is an expert at both art but also miniatures, so he thinks of the model that will come out. Often as a designer, you have to describe the weapons, the armor, the hidden objects, the interesting details, the ring that stores a spell or whatever it's but John does that all for you. You just get this lavish piece that's already like thought out how this will make a great model, and gives you tons of ideas how to write the rules, which isn't always the case, but in John's case, you get so much for free as a game designer. That is absolutely makes my life so easy.
Sure, yeah, and the miniatures themselves as well really do seem to be able to bring that Blanchian feel to life as well.
Yeah,
so they've done a really nice job with it.
Yeah, I think there is the 54 mil scale, which everybody would normally consider mad. It gives John's designs room to breathe. And I see these going to be very popular with the collectors, painters, and the sort of the John Blanche aficionados who really appreciate all that the intricate detail, which I think can sometimes get lost in 32 mil miniatures, especially once your eyes are not as good as they used to be. And I think the people at the Grimdark Compendium who painted the first ones, they've done absolutely spot on job. And I think for a lot of these miniature sculptures, the chance to work with John and on his art, I mean, that's kind of nice thing to have in your resume, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I imagine it would be an opportunity that was hard to say no to for any sculptor. Did that scale affect? I mean, is there any kind of significant changes you had to make in the design process to accommodate that scale?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so it wouldn't take a huge amount of space. We had to limit the size of the dueling arena, which I think works better anyway, because it gives tactical options then that if there are walls here, then if you push somebody against the wall, it's that allows for different kinds of moves. But the idea always was that this is not a game that takes a huge amount of time to set up or masses of space or requires tons of scenery that you can just roll your mat and start playing. So because the models are larger, it also meant that the fighting arenas in either would have to be huge, which is not practical, but now you have to limit yourself to a very confined space, which I think works in the favor of the game because it creates more gameplay situations rather than if you had this humongous, massive open field.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And can you do you interact? You mentioned like the walls and you can knock people into. Is there a lot of interaction with the terrain and with the sort of the features of the board?
Yeah. So we have a rules for item, which could be a chest, a barrel, a candelabra, whatever, and then there is like options to throw them or to push enemies into them or jump on top of them. We abstract it a little bit so people would have a little bit more leeway to build the model. So the jumping on table / chair / barrel uses the same rules course. It's anyway a great scene that you jump on top of barrel and then you can do a backflip over the opponent. Then you pick the backstab. It's which then does double damage. And we want it to be fluid. So you don't want to be in a situation that it's the rules say it's a 4-legged chair and this chair is 3-legged, so you can't use the card. We tried to give a much more open-ended and free uses of the environment. But yeah, there is basically a couple of categories that a piece of scenery can be, and that frees up if somebody wants to build the fighting arena as a full model. They have a little bit more leeway on how they do it, rather than that it has to be exactly a barrel of this many millimeters high.
One final question, I suppose, around on Garde is that there's a lot of traditional work involved in the creation of those miniatures as well, isn't there? So that's quite nice to see the hand sculpted miniatures making their return there.
Oh yeah, it's part of this. I think is that it's a celebration of human creativity, and in some ways, it's the extremely suitable that we are using traditionally sculpted miniatures. Again, I don't think one side is superior to other in sense that both of them are created by very talented creative people who are good at their job. But it's nice to show different aspects of the hobby and the game creation that, again, maybe not all of the newer generation fans have ever been exposed to.
Massive thanks to Ronan, Nigel, Patrick, Paul, Tuomas, Thomas, and John for taking the time to talk to me about your amazing work. Every conversation was genuinely fascinating. I had a great time, and seeing how a game like this is put together has been absolutely enlightening. So thank you all. If you would like to find out even more about John Blanche's On Garde, then you can watch a video on my main channel about it right now, an overview of the creation process and everything that we've found out so far about this amazing looking game. And there is a link in the description below in order to check out the official sites for On Garde and to see everything that's coming up and everything that's been released. I will soon be releasing my full conversation with Tuomas Pirinen about his collaborative relationship with John Blanche. And I will also be sharing on my Patreon some exclusive extended versions of the conversations from this anthology, so you can find out more about the individual contributors' histories, their careers, and different aspects of the creation of On Garde. And speaking of patreon.com/Jordan Sorcery, there is loads of exclusive and early access content, interviews, articles, blog posts, podcasts, behind the scenes information, lots of different stuff, including some free content about the history of Warhammer if you are interested in finding out more about Games Workshop and the deep past of this hobby that we love so much. You can check that out. I am greatly appreciative of any support that you can offer, but even if you just want to see what's there, then it is worth a quick look. Or at least I think so. Thank you once again to everybody who joined me to talk about John Blanche's On Garde. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery.